What is going on, y'all? It is the Caveman back with Against the Blitz, episode 9. I'm here with Austin, football with Oz, coming to report our findings from Super Bowl 59. It was a game that went haywire for the big bad team in red, and I'm sure you've probably had all sorts of breakdowns shoved down your throat. I'm sure you have your own opinions of the game, so we're not going to do the average breakdown of this one because it's kind of a saturated topic, but there were some takeaways and some things that we had that we felt were unique to provide to the conversation. Hence why it's coming out a little bit later than your average Monday morning to kind of articulate what we took away from this game. So what were your thoughts? I mean, how did you feel about Super Bowl 59?
I just kept thinking about Howie Roseman the entire time. About how some one man who didn't win a playoff game for like 8 years as a GM was trusted this much to just keep going and build one of the first super teams, I'd say, front to bottom of an NFL roster. It kind of felt like, I don't know if you watched Ohio State versus Notre Dame, where like no matter what Notre Dame tried, they just didn't have the guys. Like they just did not have the athletes that the other team did. And that's kind of how it felt with KC and Philly, or besides running the ball, everything that they tried to do worked. And in fact, they didn't actually even have to blitz, as we talked about a little bit. Kind of reminiscent of the Tampa game, the Tampa Super Bowl with Mahomes a few years ago, where you could tell from the beginning it was going to get ugly. And it actually only got uglier than the Tampa game.
Yeah, in every respect too. Like I watched the Tampa game back a little while ago, like over the break, over the Pro Bowl break, and I just like the highlight video that the NFL always posts. And I didn't remember that like the game kind of was close for some of the first half against Tampa. If I remember correctly, it wasn't as bad as I felt like I remember until it got really late. This game, it was just bad from the jump.
It felt like that like 10-0, whatever, should have been like 17 or 21-0, with the only mistake Hurts had being that pick that probably would have resulted in at least a field goal. Plus, I think, what did they go for it on 4th and miss it one time too? Mm-hmm. So that was like 2 times where they were, at least 6 points total could have been added onto that score. It was ugly. I mean, I don't know how many plays in a row KC ran without a run, but it was far too many. I think the leading rusher in attempts for a running back was 3. I think Kareem Hunt and Pacheco each had 3 attempts each.
Oh my God.
P. Ryan having 1. So yeah, my prediction of Mahomes being the leading rusher came true. I didn't think it would come true like that. It was a bad game plan almost from KC. So I'm curious to know like about the kind of like the game plan that you saw. Like, what were they even trying to do?
From what I understand, the Chiefs all season had, even though they were a 14-1 team or whatever they finished the season as, 15-2, they actually ran the ball a lot less compared to a lot of the other top teams. Like in terms of literal rush attempts, they were supplementing their run game with a lot of quick passes, and I think that was probably what they were trying to stick to. It was just they weren't used to seeing the pressure in combination with the congestedness that they were getting from the second level. Like there was nothing quick that Mahomes wanted ever. Like anything quick that he was looking for, it was always taken away. And by the time he can get to another layer of the progression, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Josh Sweat was in his face. So I feel like from a game plan perspective, they probably approached it like they've approached every game. They just weren't prepared for the onslaught that came from Philadelphia. I think it's just that simple, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, just rushing 4 and coming home 50% of the time is ridiculous. Like you said, I think you said all the big guys, Nolan Smith, Josh Sweat, I think he had 7 pressures accredited to him. That's insane going up against Joe Thuney, who's a multiple-time All-Pro, I'm pretty sure. 2 guys that weren't even mentioned that I think were also monsters because the list is like 10 people long. Milton Williams is one that he was like a backup kind of 3-tech player, rotational guy. Came in with, I think he was accredited with 4 pressures, which is still kind of crazy for an interior player. And then I believe it's pronounced Jalix Hunt.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. He's a rookie out of Houston Christian, who is like this developmental, supposed to sit on the bench for 4 years kind of guy and then come in later. He had 5 pressures and a couple of really early sacks against Mahomes that turned the table. So even the guys that are rotating in off the bench, Mora Ojomo had a handful of pressures. Guys that are backups were dominating the Chiefs' front 5. So whatever they've wanted to do worked, even with the backups. So from that point, KC had no chance.
Yeah, pretty much. I think that's basically the moral of the story. It was as lopsided as it gets. The Eagles played the best game they probably could have, and the Chiefs seemingly played the worst. One of the things that I was talking about when highlighting this game with you in our last pod was containing Mahomes. I did not think they'd be nearly as successful pressuring him the way they did, but they still did a great job of keeping him in the pocket. Like, a big issue with Patrick Mahomes and what makes him so good is that the dude is slippery. There were even a few plays where he made like 3 or 4 guys miss behind the line of scrimmage and then eventually was tackled by the 5th 2 yards beyond it. And he was doing everything he can, but they were rallying to the football and keeping him off balance, uneasy. This is kind of the conversation we had when CJ Stroud went up against Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
It's like his internal clock was just shattered. Like, he had no trust by the end of it. He had that missed throw to Hopkins that was off the mark on that 4th down really late. He even, in my opinion, he had Justin Watson coming out of the slot on a cheat motion. I saw that play back, and he was wide open. Like, I think he just was broken by the end of it. He was a broken man, and that's what happens when you're outclassed. That was what happened. They were outclassed.
Yeah. One other thing that I heard someone talk about and I wanted to touch on was Joe Thuney. We talked about Pro Bowl level guard, all pro level guard, has been playing left tackle for the Chiefs for a couple weeks now, probably a month or 2. I think it's kind of odd that you would move a all pro level guard to play mediocre tackle and then have Caliendo playing left guard. So you move a bad tackle and an elite guard and then turn that into a mediocre tackle and a mediocre guard. I kind of wish that they would have just done what they've done all year and keep this all pro level guard, put him against Jalen Carter and Milton Williams and then just help out the left side. But instead they took away 2 good positions. And I think it really showed. Joe Thuney got beat for 7 pressures, all by Josh Sweat, who is a usually pretty mediocre middle of the pack edge rusher. So that was a level of concern that I had going into the game, was that left guard spot, and it ended up actually being the left tackle spot that murdered them.
Yeah, it was something that he got a lot of praise for being able to do, but to your point, it's like, he's still an all-pro guard at the end of the day. You are, like, as you were saying, essentially you're downgrading 2 positions in exchange for making up for 1, if that makes sense. So it's like a give and take that maybe wasn't worth it, especially knowing how dominant the interior is for Philadelphia. I mean, I know Nolan Smith, Josh Sweat, those guys on the edge are monsters, but throughout the course of the postseason, a lot of the disruption from Philadelphia has been from the interior guys. So maybe having Joe Thuney on the inside might have relieved some of the interior pressure, and then maybe Mahomes would have been able to step up into pockets more. Maybe they would have been able to roll left, maybe roll pocket left or 2. Like, who knows what they could have changed had that adjustment not been made.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to look at stuff like that too, and it probably would have kind of changed the game. But for how brutal this beatdown was, looking back at it, I can't find 1 or 2 things that could have changed the game completely. They were outclassed everywhere, like you were saying. So that was just one fun little thing that I thought was interesting and did definitely really hurt, not having that elite presence there. But, God, dude, even on defense, they were screwed. I mean, if you're letting Jalen Hurts beat you on deep balls, from the get-go, it kind of takes away your blitz a little bit. And they didn't really get to blitz him anymore after that because he was hitting home runs every time.
Yeah, every single time there was a 3rd and short, 4th and short, it was a go ball. It was a go ball to Jahan Dotson, A.J. Brown. They mutilated him with it. I mean, early on in the game on the fourth down and 3 when he hits A.J. Brown for 25 yards and they call OPI, it's like that was a obviously a bad call, but nonetheless, that was a tall tale sign of what was to come because that was supposed that right there was encompassing the matchup that was going to determine the game. Jalen Hurts against Spags and that pressure on 3rd down in those big moments. That was really the foundation that we were all waiting to see. And once Jalen Hurts dropped back, the blitz was picked up and he laid it in a bucket to their 3rd, 4th, 5th string pass catcher. Like that was doom. That was doom from that moment forward.
Yeah. I mean, looking back at it, there wasn't a single position group in Philly that did bad. Usually, like, going into the game, the consensus was kind of like, Jalen Hurts just has to not mess up, and they win this game. Like, they have the personnel everywhere. It just has to be Jalen Hurts has to have a mediocre game, and they win. And he actually had a good game, which is why I think that they dominated him. Him setting the record for rushing yards by a QB in the Super Bowl was insane. I figured somebody at some point would have ran for 100, but crazy that it was like 70. Him showing off his legs on 3rd downs on top of their unsuccessful 1st down runs literally every single time. I would have thought that if Saquon couldn't run, I thought they were screwed. Like I thought for sure if you told me Saquon had like 25 carries for like 55 yards, I would have told you they lost by like 21. So that's kind of insane that Jalen Hurts was the one that stepped up heavy, and Saquon and the rushing offense was actually the one that failed.
That's fair. I mean, Jalen Hurts did more than his job last night, and he deserves a round of applause. The 2nd Super Bowl appearance, and this is the 2nd exceptional performance from Jalen Hurts. And as much as we have even gone on record, rightfully 100%. Ragging on him, I will not take back anything I said at the time I said it, but. No. For him to really stand tall and not rush his process and to really just be patient in the pocket. Like he had a lot of time back there, like almost every drop back. He had a ton of time, but he wasn't rushing anything. He wasn't making bad decisions. He was letting things develop, using the time he got and just hitting throws. It was a cerebral game, the type of game that I think he was trying to play, that he's been trying to live up to, that you've spoken to in a previous episode.
Yeah. I mean, he's been trying to be this like stoic, cheesy, corny QB like Russell Wilson, and it's working now. He finally showed off that he can do that. Pocket passer, cerebral, scan the field calmly, not panic like Mahomes did, and deliver on time. Like you said, obviously, having that offensive line, most quarterbacks in the NFL would do really well. But like we were kind of talking about in every episode ever about the Eagles, all he has to do is not mess up and they win. They're such a good roster that all he has to do is not mess up and they win. And he did well more than his job. So I am with you. This doesn't just skyrocket him into the top 4 quarterbacks. I think like my QB rankings are so thought out and precise that like one game isn't going to just shoot somebody super far ahead. But it does give him a little bit more respect.
Absolutely. Sure. Yeah. I unfortunately, as I texted you last night, had to shoot down a Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts comparison after the game. No. But nonetheless, this is one of those games that I'll file away. It's like he can start off the season reverting, but I'll just have this in the back of my mind. Like, we know what he can do. We know what he looks like at his best, and he'll get a pass maybe next time something goes haywire. Like, this is the type of thing I wanted to see for him to prove that he could be the quarterback that we saw him be a couple years ago. But I did want to speak to this whole outclassed, out-talented thing, because before the game, I had made my prediction on here. I was going all Eagles, and Sunday morning, I woke up and I like had an epiphany. And I was like far more confident in Philadelphia than I should have been. And I crafted this like way too long tweet that could have served as like the Willy Wonka tunnel crash out when they're on the boat. Like it could have been that, but the football version with a picture of my Eagles money line bet on it. And I think looking back, of course, hindsight helps this. We were so jaded and clouded from the reality. There were constants to this game. There were facts that we knew for 2 weeks leading up to this game. And the facts were that Jalen Hurts, Philadelphia, that defense, that offensive line, everywhere outside of coaching and quarterback, they were better than Kansas City. That was a constant. That was a fact, right? And what we also knew is Kansas City, although they had a great record, although they had won 12, they were 12-0 in one-score games, they had not seen a roster, a team that they were the definitive worst team in the game. They have not seen a team this good all season long. And even if their record says they went 15-2, they still struggled. There were still moments where, their heart stopped. They weren't going to get away with those type of victories in a game like this against a team like this. And I think because of Kansas City's legacy, we didn't see that for what it was.
Like, that's fair though. Yeah, like to have the legacy cloud you a little bit.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but like this was the best team they've ever faced. 100%.
Right. And that was pretty much what I was thinking going into the game. I'm like, this is the best team they probably have ever seen, like top to bottom.
It's one of the most carefully crafted rosters I've ever seen. Like what you're saying, like it is like there is zero weakness. And on top of there not having any weaknesses, they have backup plans for all of their impending free agents. Like this was a scarily crafted team that looks like it's only getting better, which is ridiculous. Which is ridiculous.
Right. And that's a very good point too. It's like, where's the fall off with Philadelphia? There is none.
Right. Like when I'm doing their mock drafts with everyone else, I kind of have to plan like this guy needs a slot receiver. This team needs a new left tackle. I'm trying to think like which player needs a backup on the Eagles because none of these rookies are starting anytime soon. So having the best rookie corner duo I've ever seen, Saquon, the best offensive line in football, one of the best D lines in football, one of the best linebacker. Like it's so stupid.
Yeah.
But
and it would have taken like I said, hindsight heavily influencing me here, but it would have taken the stars aligning for Kansas City to win this game. Like their margin for error compared to Philadelphia was just so much smaller. Like they would have needed to craft the perfect game plan, and everybody on that team would have had to play above expectation and to have maybe one of the best games of their lives. Plus, they would have needed key players on Philadelphia to break down to win this game. And like I said, I think the best way to describe their best path to victory is the stars just would have had to align. And that's just far too much to ask on the biggest stage.
100%. And there were very few stars that even did align at all. Like even if they aligned halfway, the game would have maybe been like 40-something to 30-something. But as outside of what like Creed Humphrey and like the line, like the run defense, like outside of that small category, every other player played their worst game in a while, besides Xavier Worthy, who we don't talk about him to Bales fans, but outside of him and Drew Tranquil, like everybody had their worst game of the year.
Yep. So that was I saw this phrase get tossed around a lot on Twitter today, and I never heard it before, but I think it goes something like, forget the X's and O's when you have the Jimmies and Joes or something like that. I saw that a lot on Twitter, but it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. And they had the X's and O's too.
Yeah.
They had both. They had both of them, and that's why you see the most lopsided Super Bowl since what? Russell Wilson, and when he beat down on Denver. Is that the last time there was a Super Bowl this bad? I think.
Yeah.
And before that, like the 70s. Like it's this is a rare thing to see where the game is away from them on the second drive of the game.
Literally. Oh man, what was my train of thought? I think I was just gonna say the Kansas City, like you said, like the first second drive of the game, it spelled not good. It was just, it smelled bad from the get-go. And that was what I was going to say. We can't go this whole, I was trying to remember. We can't go this whole time talking about how good the players did and the X's and O's and all that stuff without mentioning Vic Fangio. And, he probably in the grand scheme deserved the Super Bowl MVP, but he put a lid on anything deep, which we knew they were going to do. And he managed to suffocate Mahomes underneath. And then, of course, the guys up front did the rest. But he deserves that trophy. I mean, I know Jalen Hurts won it, but if any real football watcher saw that game and they're like, yeah, this defense won them this game, and safe to say that Vic Fangio has a lot to do with that.
You know who kind of sucked that I kind of just remembered? Matt Ariaza, or Araja, whatever you say his name. Like, he was kind of poop. Like, he had a couple 60-yard bombs that all went into, like, the back of the end zone. And then when it was time to unleash another 60-yard bomb, it was like, here's, like, a little 39-yarder to, like, the 30. Like, that was one of, like, and that was something I felt was that, like, KC was backed up inside their own 15. But it felt like the whole game. Like, they had to go march. The Eagles had to hit one deep ball, and they were in field goal range, like, every single time. So, field position, special teams, way bigger than people give them credit for. Nico Remigio, the only guy that showed up on the special teams unit. Congrats to him. Matt Ariaza, however you say it. F minus. F minus to you. I watch special teams. F minus.
That's true. There was, at one point, I tweeted out, like, Ariaza gives no fucks. He's just going to kill it. Like, it doesn't matter where on the field it is. He's putting every ounce of effort he has into killing the football. Like, there is no such thing as pinning the offense deep when Matt Ariaza is the punter. Like, there were probably, obviously it wouldn't have made a difference, but there were probably a couple opportunities where Kansas City wouldn't have minded having to trot out there if the Eagles were starting at their own 12 or their 10 or their 15, but it was always at the touchback line.
Yeah, Matt Ariaza just does literally whatever he wants out there. He does whatever he wants anywhere, as we know, but he is not convicted, so I'm not going to continue that thought. Regardless, like, God, like, literally, like, as we were talking about stars aligning, even special teams didn't show up. Harrison Butker didn't get to show up at all. He literally didn't kick anything.
I think he did the opening kickoff. That was the only time he stepped on the field.
Back to the kitchen you go, Harrison Butker. Join your wife.
That was good.
It's so bad. And Braden, man, one hell of a game. Absolute punt central.
How many did he hit? Probably 3.
I think he only punted 2 or 3 times, but they were all like within like the 15 to 10 yard line. So, absolute respect to my special teams friends.
My biggest takeaway from this game, and this is something I have been on Twitter going to war about all day long, and I had made a TikTok about it after the game last night. Long story short, this game, I don't care how you phrase it, hurt Mahomes' chances at being the GOAT, in the GOAT conversation with Brady. And this has been a hot conversation all day long, and I've been trying to lead the charge for Brady. Like, I'm not a Brady lover. I'm not a Mahomes lover. I just look at it as objectively as I possibly can. And the biggest argument for Mahomes is, he's still on pace. He's 3-2 before 30, just like 3-2 in Super Bowls before 30, just like Brady was. The thing about that for me is that is assuming that Mahomes finishes the job. That's assuming he gets to 6 or 7 rings. Like, being on pace doesn't mean fucking shit. Brady put the pen to paper. Like, he did it. So to say someone is on pace, to me, means nothing. And I think if Mahomes had won that game last night, or even not have gotten blown out. I do think getting blown out for the second time in a Super Bowl matters. But nonetheless, if he had won that game, it would have strengthened his case to be the GOAT so much, because even if he didn't get to 7 rings, which I think is going to be necessary, he would have been able to say, you know what, I have 5, I have 6, but I three-peated. I did something that Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback to ever play the game, never did. To have something on your resume that Tom Brady never did would have been a pretty big part of a resume, a pretty large achievement. But missing out on that opportunity, there's no guarantee he gets to the amount of rings necessary to really match Brady's case, match Brady's resume. So I don't know. I think people are insane still to say that Mahomes is the GOAT. I think that conversation
I'm not there yet.
Is still way off.
Yeah. And I'm not someone that, like, I don't think that you need 7 Super Bowls to be the GOAT. I think you can be a better football player and have 4. I think Tom Brady has a couple Super Bowls where he didn't do enough to win, but his defense did. Like, I think the Rams game offensively was a tragedy, and his defense just did better. So he won, and he got another Super Bowl out of that. A couple earlier in his career, I thought that he was okay at best, and he just was collecting wins because the defense helped out. So I think even if he had 4, I still think he's above Mahomes now. But I'm willing to listen in the future. I'm never going to write somebody off at age, 30? Like, I'm not going to write him off yet, because Tom Brady had like 3 of them in his last 5 years. So I'll give him a little bit of a break, especially with how much everyone hates Mahomes. It's kind of up and down. But the one I actually wanted to get into, this should kind of be good as a Bills fan to think about, is it's been a while since we've seen Mahomes at Mahomes level. It's been the Chiefs themselves. And 2 years ago, if you would have mentioned that Josh Allen or Lamar was at Mahomes level, you'd be laughed at. But how many years in a row does Mahomes need to play like this before we say he's not the best quarterback in the NFL anymore?
That is a question that I kind of was entertaining with my family last night, and we can speak to this side tangent in a second. But I feel like for me, Mahomes has kind of proven that he still is the best just because of the way he's adapted his game. I think the whole losing Tyreek Hill thing was a pretty big deal, and to still go and win a Super Bowl after losing him with an underwhelming, group around him, I think that was pretty crazy. I mean, he was a gunslinging maniac early on in his career, and to become this very disciplined, mistake-free quarterback, I think I don't think that's easy to do. And Josh Allen's a perfect example of that. Speaking of him, and this year he finally was able to kind of become that. But for Mahomes, the transition was seamless, and they won a Super Bowl doing both pretty quick. So, and I think that says more about the Chiefs, to your point. But on that same wavelength, I think Mahomes still is the best. I think Josh Allen will have to beat. I know the whole head-to-head thing is null and void, but the Bills haven't gotten past the Chiefs yet, so I still find it difficult. Yeah. I think that talking point is probably last on the list of important things, but I have a hard time entertaining any of those talks just because no one has really done enough to dethrone him yet, I guess.
No. Yeah, I'm not there yet. But I'm finally thinking about how long this has to happen where he puts up pretty average production and kind of has these elite defenses kind of helping him get there. But yeah, part of that is also having Hollywood Brown for the last 10th of a season, a 50-year-old D-Hop, and Justin Watson out there. That makes a huge difference. It's hard to produce like that, which is why a lot of Josh Allen's production came running. He just didn't have a lot of the dogs to throw to. So adapting like that is something that I'm seeing Josh Allen do. And people like Lamar even did, where he had his best passing season by far. So I'm just at what point is that intersection where they keep improving and he keeps declining, where you can kind of talk about one of them being the better quarterback in the NFL? I'm not there yet, but like I feel like it could be there at some point.
Yeah, I guess it's all about how you look at it, because I don't know if I see him like, is he declining, I guess is the question. I don't know if I would say he certainly wasn't Mahomes this year. Let's be clear.
Right.
They won games this season that they probably shouldn't have because they blocked field goals, or Aiden O'Connell takes a snap he probably shouldn't have and they recover a fumble. Like, shit like that happened that went in their way in games where Mahomes was not sharp. Although I don't know. I think this is the first year. Let's put it this way. I think this is the first year where you could make the argument that he was not he wasn't his best a lot of the time.
Yeah,
I think this is the first season that you could say that.
It was legitimately like not a great season, not even like really that good of a season, like production wise and just even eye test wise. Like he had a couple games against bad defenses where he played pretty bad. And most quarterbacks don't get that luxury to have a few bad games and win that many games. Really, just him and Jalen Hurts, it feels like at the moment. So, yeah, I don't know when the intersection would be, but I'm always willing to keep an open mind about overtaking someone's throne. And I don't think they have yet. I don't think it's even that close. But at some point, like we're gonna need to see a little bit more of vintage Mahomes. If their team's not going to get better, and they do have a few concerning players leaving, potentially. So, well, it'll be interesting to see how they can fill those gaps.
Yeah. I think I know something I read on Twitter about the career arc of Mahomes and kind of what I was alluding to earlier of going from this gunslinging maniac to this, very disciplined quarterback. Maybe he goes back to maybe this offense kind of switches gears. I mean, that was a conversation that we were having before the season with all the speed they seemed to accumulate at wide receiver. And then they lost Rice. They didn't have Hollywood. And it took Worthy quite a while, I would say half a season, to really get his feet wet. So maybe that is what they try to get back to. I mean, Mahomes arguably hit the best throw I've seen all season.
Oh my God,
at the end of the game.
Ridiculous.
Like that was the definition of I give no fucks right now.
Yes.
And that was the type of like, I'm better than all of you. I don't care about what happens here. I'm just gonna do this. And he did it. So I feel like I also saw people saying, well, they should have tried pushing the ball downfield earlier. Well, it's like, well, he had no time. So
they cover 4 the entire game. Like, there's only so much you can do. Like when you throw a ball in between 2 defenders to the fastest player on the planet, like you don't get that many opportunities. Like you can't do that all game long.
Not to mention, like you do that, 5 times? You probably, let's say 10 times. You do that 10 times, you probably hit it once or twice. It either it's picked or false incomplete 80% of the time.
Like you have to get first downs to move the ball. You can't just throw deep balls the entire time. You can't run 4 verts. It's not Madden. Like you can't run cover 2 beaters the entire time. Like it's not going to happen. There's no cheese plays in the NFL.
Yeah.
Like unless they just ran wasp a bunch of times, like against I think in the playoff game 5 years ago. But yeah, they're an issue. They're a team where a lot of their superstars are not necessarily declining, but their careers are starting to see an end. Like Travis Kelce, who has been the one that has helped him become this kind of condensed pocket passer, close to the line of scrimmage in structure. And then Chris Jones is still getting better, but he's old. He's an old person. So seeing 2 of their other most important players kind of on their way out, Kelce probably closer, and Trey Smith as a possible free agent this season, who sounds like he's gone. So they're going to have to do a lot of reshuffling to get this team back to where they were a few years ago.
Yeah, I agree. And I think something people are not considering at all either is the age of Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo. Andy Reid is 66. Steve Spagnuolo is 65. The oldest head coach to win a Super Bowl was Bruce Arians in 2020. He was 68. And a lot of other greats, Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick, these guys were fired a few years ago, but they were 71, 72, and they had a few not so good years toward the end for various reasons. But nonetheless, at what point do those guys start to fall off? Like,
yeah, I mean, there's like I was saying, like, there's like an energy that comes from being a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
And if you lose that energy as a how old is he, 66?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you hit your 70s, like you lose all of your energy unless you're Pete Carroll. So yeah, I'm actually, that's a good point. I'm actually kind of worried about when he decides to hang it up. I mean, he looks even older than 66. So like that window's probably coming up.
Right, which is also kind of why I get mad when people just are having this GOAT Brady Mahomes conversation, and they just assume that these other rings are going to fall into his lap and he's going to be in all of these Super Bowls in the future. It's like he'll definitely make another one. I'm pretty confident in that, but he still has such a long way to go. And the guys that I think are most responsible for his most recent success don't have much longer, historically speaking. So
yeah,
when you talk about Travis Kelce and Chris Jones and the offensive line, everyone's so focused on the players around Mahomes. Well, what happens in 5 years when Spags is gone and when Andy Reid is, possibly declining and the offense doesn't look the same because schematically he's figured out and things are declining? Like, these things happen with old age and no one's talking about it. Like, who replaces these guys? Matt Nagy?
And I mean,
we've seen that experiment. Like,
I mean, KC hasn't had a huge history of just hitting bombs on coaches all the time. They hit a good one in Andy Reid, who was already a proven good coach. So it's not like they're out here just finding, A-plus coordinators out there, but like they've had success with mediocre guys because they had one of the best head coaches of all time. So when he's gone, they're going to have to retool completely. I mean, you can't have guys like Matt Nagy be a actual play caller on your team if you're going to be the best quarterback of all time and win, 4 more Super Bowls. Like, that can't happen. So, like, they have to start this probably now, as we've seen with people like Belichick that did not go well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not necessarily educated on this particular topic, but I don't know of many coordinators that have been with Andy Reid or been under Andy Reid or been with Spags, for example, as an assistant or anything, that have gone off and become their own individual. Like, I can't, that tree doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned.
Like, McVay tree is real. The Shanahan tree is real. And the Reid tree is really not. We tried the Eric Bieniemy thing. He went on to be a running backs coach. And he went to UCLA and failed. Like, there are people that will be a good coordinator for them, and everyone will call for them to be a coach because they think that the coordinator is the one doing the work. It's not. It's 2 people. It's Reid and it's Spags. So when they're inevitably gone in the next decade, or even less than that, yeah, they're going to have to retool again. And that's hard to do when you want to be the GOAT.
Yeah. I would say if by then Mahomes doesn't have 5 rings or 4, at least another one, like, I don't know. Some miracle is going to have to happen where these guys are replaced and they're playing at that level, because no matter how good the players are, we can talk to Jimmys and Joes all we want. The X's and O's do still matter. And
very much so.
They have been the reason why they have won. They won last year and they were even in it this year. Like, those, I would say the coaches were the reason, especially this season. Like 100,000% drove this bus.
Yeah. And Reid's not gone yet, but there's been a little bit more talk as of late about his future not being so set in stone in Kansas City. And once those talks start happening, I've never seen a coach last more than 5 years. Like, once they start talking, I probably got a few more in me, they're gone soon. That's what Kelsey's doing. That's what he's doing. They're both gone probably sooner than we'd even imagine. So it's a good point to bring up that, probably a top 5 coach of all time is on the way out in the near future. So that's going to put a humongous shake in how they rebuild and retool this team.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And, we'll finally be able to answer the questions that I know a lot of people ask when speculating about Patrick is, what would he be without Andy Reid or Travis Kelce? We saw what he was without Tyreek. He disproved that. I'm confident the team will still be very good, of course. but churning out inevitable AFC Championship appearances and Super Bowl appearances like that, those days could be long gone in a couple of years.
I would pay so much money to be playing in the NFC.
No.
Like having to play the Ravens, Bills, Chiefs. Like people like the Bengals are missing the playoffs. Like I would pay so much money to be able to play teams like the Packers in like in the NFC Championship sometime. Like it feels like every AFC team is worthy of a Super Bowl win. Like every team that's like making these playoffs is worthy of a win. Like there's like 3 or 4 that felt like they would have beat most other Super Bowl teams in the past 5 years. So it's just unreal that KC was the one that made it through and still got destroyed.
On that same note, one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, how much different is the outcome of this game if it's Buffalo? If it's different at all?
I think it's different in that I don't see the Bills' offense being shut down like that. I think that they would be able to run the ball a little bit more. I think Josh Allen is just kind of built to handle pressure a little bit better, which is how freaking massive he is. Newly married, I think that's going to help him out. I think that they do better. Obviously, I feel like any team would be doing better than what felt like a 50-point loss. So I like the matchups better. I still don't think they win. I don't think anybody beats that Philly team that just showed up. Whether it's offense, defense, I think that the Bills' offensive line would make a huge difference, considering they have one of the best in the NFL. But I don't know if they have the dogs in terms of offensive weapons, and I don't know if that safety room and interior is going to stop Saquon like Casey did.
Yeah, that was an argument I got into after the game, and I was saying like confidently, I still think the Bills also lose by like 10 plus, like at least. And
yeah, I think that.
Yeah, and the biggest difference between the two teams, Chiefs and Bills, was what you said was the offensive line play. Maybe Buffalo finds a rhythm on the ground, but that even if they do, that would not make up for the gashing that Saquon probably would have been doing to our interior defensive line. Like there's no chance in hell the Bills defense is shutting down that run game the way that Kansas City did. No. And even if they managed to somehow, I have no faith in our secondary, especially if, who knows, with Benford. I mean, I assume he would have been healthy, but if they had to roll Elam out there or, rolling, poor Cole Bishop out there with DeMar Hamlin, like A.J. Brown made Trent McDuffie look like a fucking baby. Like an all-pro corner was sat on his ass multiple times.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think Buffalo's corners are better suited for him. But like you were saying, they have so many freaking weapons. Like you got to guard Devontae Smith somehow. You got to guard Goddard, who didn't do anything. You have to somehow stop Saquon. I love Ed Oliver for the love of God, but he's not Chris Jones. Like there's a lot of guys that on that Philly team that you would have had to have accounted for, and I just don't think Buffalo has those. I don't think anyone does, to be straight up.
I mean, we couldn't generate pressure on Mahomes at all. I mean, the Eagles made it look like it was so effortless, and Buffalo struggled to really get to Patrick. And I would not have been enjoying watching AJ Epinesa and Greg Rousseau and Von Miller try to get to Jalen Hurts. I mean, it would have been talk about time. Like maybe I'm being pessimistic, but it just felt like the matchup offensively probably would have benefited Buffalo. Maybe we sustain a couple offensive drives that actually just chew clock so the score isn't as bad. But defensively, I think we would have been so out of our element, especially against a team that we saw last year once, but was not the caliber it is this year with Saquon. I just don't think it would have been pretty. So part of me is like, I'm not the most mad that Kansas City was the one that had to go up against Goliath and
it saved embarrassment. It saved. Yeah. Like the only embarrassing thing will just forever be 13 seconds and the 4 games in a row. Like it'll always be that, but it'll never be the 30-point loss to Jalen Hurts in the Super Bowl. That'll never happen. But I mean, if they make it next year, it might, because I honestly, looking at the free agents that Philly has for this upcoming season, I don't see them getting much worse at all. So that was the next thing I was going to bring up is like the only starters that are free agents this year are Josh Sweat, who was pretty much a scratch all season long until the Super Bowl. Zach Bond, who I assume that they'll prioritize, and Mekhi Becton, really, who they got for like a nickel and turned him into a monster. So I'm not too worried about losing a handful of guys outside of Bond, which I don't think they're going to lose. So retooling their offense again, probably adding a wide receiver 3. Imagine that. Imagine there's another one, like some second round rookie that is like, imagine they get the Xavier Worthy of this year and become this unstoppable force. I don't feel good. Like, I feel gross thinking about it.
Yeah, I almost, part of me almost is like happy that the Bills aren't in the NFC, because like at least every year, like we kind of know we're going to lose to the Chiefs, or at least it feels like it. But at least we think there's a chance. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just that high on Philadelphia right now. But if that iteration
100%.
of Philly is ever seen again, there is no chance for a single soul ever.
Right. I mean, literally, even if they only bring back Bond, one person, they have the dogs to fill in for Josh Sweat and Milton Williams and Mekhi Becton. Like, they have the guys to fill in that and do pretty well. And then they can just draft a full roster of best available players, sign a couple of guys in free agency. Like, they have cap room. I don't know if you've seen their cap room. They have cap room. So, yeah, I feel nauseous, like, actually thinking about what they're able to do with how hot Howie Roseman's been doing, all the dirt he has on other GMs. They're going to make another trade this offseason. It's going to make everyone mad again. So,
how sick would it be if they somehow got Garrett? Like,
oh, I would throw
how sick if they landed Myles Garrett. And the crazy part is that it's not impossible. Like,
no, trade their first at the end. Trade another one next year, because who needs it? You know, it's freaking Howie Roseman. He'll get another one later for Tyler Steen. Like, he'll trick somebody into that. Like, somehow he'll manage to be able to trade away 2 firsts and some other piece that they're in need of, and they're going to get Myles Garrett.
Imagine.
Somehow.
Well, yeah, that would be scary. I feel, I guess to my point, like, you're in the NFC. It's like the mountain right now is Philly. Like, that's the mountain you're trying to climb. Forget the Super Bowl. Forget the NFC Championship. You're trying to climb and get to the top of Eagles Mountain. Did you play Pokemon growing up?
Brief. It was a brief period. My mom made me get rid of my cards.
No, that sucks. I
know.
In one of the DS games in Soul Silver and Heart and Gold, there was a trainer named Red, and he stood at the top of one of the mountains. And at the end of the game, the very last thing I think that you can do is go up and beat like the best trainer in the entire game. And it's like, you got to scale this entire mountain. And it's like, that's the mountain. It's Eagles Mountain. And I'm picturing Howie Roseman at the top with his team, just awaiting the sorry soul that has to try and take him down.
Yeah. And I almost feel, looking at the free agents that the Chiefs have next year, for Buffalo and Cincinnati's sake, I don't like the replacements they have for the guys that might leave soon. So, I mean, they have Justin Reed, who made a couple plays. They have Hollywood that might be going, Nick Bolton, Trey Smith, who's been one of the best guards in the NFL the last few years. So, their lack of depth in those positions kind of concerns me. I feel confident they'll be able to slide a guy in and fill those gaps, but that just kind of takes away from the building of the future they're going to be able to do, finding Kelsey's replacement, finding another weapon. This is going to have to be a build back up year. They're going to lose some guys. They're going to have to build back up. And it doesn't feel like they're going to be a much better version of what they were this year, which feels really good for any team in the AFC. It's just going to have to still be the Ravens and the Bills and the Bengals and every other possible team you could think of. So I feel better about Philly's chances going forward. I feel worse about KC.
Yeah, I honestly, the more and more we talk about it and think about it, the shorter term future, I would say within the next 5 years, dare I say, kind of looks dark comparatively to their
Yes.
first 5 years. Having Patrick
Yes.
Mahomes is still the brightest thing for them going, and it would be a dream for any other organization. But for the Chiefs, compared to their standards and what they're used to over there, like they're gonna fall back into the weeds with everyone else. And knowing how good the rest of this conference is, like with the Chargers, like at some point I could see them losing the division. Will it be this year?
Ooh, yeah.
No, probably not. But I like what Harbaugh's doing. The Chargers always give them fits. It feels like they're really a boundary receiver away from being an elite offense, a truly elite offense. And then if Jesse Minter is able to keep that defense playing at the level it was this past season, like, head for head, I don't think it's crazy to say that Los Angeles could compete for the division with Kansas City.
Especially with how good that division's getting. Denver was a good team. And not that I think they'll win, but like they can hand KC a few losses here and there. I mean, they were a blocked field goal away from handing them one earlier this season. So I think with them getting a lot more competitive, we're probably going to see a lot less of these 2-loss teams that KC's been having. I think it'll be a lot more realistic to what the Bills have been seeing, where you have your highs and your lows, you have your dominant seasons, and then you don't. Then you have a few times where you skate into the playoffs by the skin of your teeth. So it'll be a lot more competitive than we're used to, which is not a good sign for them. And them losing all these good players and possible coaches, like it's grim. It's a little grim.
I would agree. I would certainly agree. The final two things I wanted to touch on, which should take like 30 seconds combined. The new score bug was not good. I know that was like the opinion of everyone else. Did you like it?
I didn't hate it, but I'm also like, I don't care. Like I can appreciate a really good one, but I don't care about a bad one. As long as it's telling me the score, and maybe if you like switch up the colors for the teams, I'm cool. I know who has the ball.
Yeah.
Like I know how many timeouts they have. Somebody else might appreciate that though, but like, I don't care. It was weird that they had like the Fortnite font though, but
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
like
I could not think of where I
recognized
that font. It looked like that's what it looked like, the fucking Fortnite font.
It wasn't good. Let me get that out there. It wasn't good, but I also don't care.
It's just a weird thing to be like to like do every year, like to introduce the new score bug in the Super Bowl. Like that's something that people, I'm not going to say look forward to, but that's like an anticipated thing to some effect. And
some people for sure, yeah.
It's just like they took like 30 seconds to do that. Literally.
Yeah, there was like
30 seconds.
They just like pressed like the green text button. PHI, here we go. Fortnite font, whatever you call that. Impact. Like here you go. Like
Impact.
like that's it. It wasn't pretty, but
no.
I think the commercials made up for it. I actually enjoyed a good bit of them. It's been a while. I saw a puppy monkey baby brief second, and I got so hyped.
Yep. When I heard it, I was looking down at my phone, and I heard puppy monkey baby in my head, like, flick to the TV.
It's been a while.
Yep.
I haven't heard that name in years.
Puppy monkey baby. That one, the Doritos commercial was good.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually like they did like a contest, and I think that was just like submitted on somebody that does visual effects in the world. So that was cool. I can't think of another one that really stuck out to me. Although I don't remember seeing one that was like god awful either.
No, there were just like some questions, like Jeep spending like $30 million to have like 2 minutes of ad straight with Harrison Ford there. Like that was weird, but yeah, there wasn't anything that I thought was, except for like some of the political ones where they just like make it black and white and do a slideshow. Like, cool. I don't care.
Yeah.
Next. Next.
I'm trying to think. There was one that stuck out to me that I thought was pretty cool. Oh, I feel like the comedy aspect of some of them has just like they've left it out. Like I think the commercials quality wise have still been there, but I think part of what makes them Super Bowl commercials is like the comedy. Like every break it felt like there was one that like made you laugh. I feel like they've kind of lost sight of that.
Yeah. Maybe it's just like I don't find things as funny anymore. Maybe they weren't that funny back then. I don't know. But yeah, I haven't had like a good I probably had 4 laughs, 4 smiles from like commercials. And I watched all of them.
Yeah, I might crack a smirk here and there, but Puppy Monkey Baby, that got me. It got me. It was nostalgic.
Forever.
My last comment too was how I felt like that throw by Mahomes to Worthy was like somehow his final fuck you to Buffalo. Like, you know what? We might have gotten our ass kicked, but we beat those other assholes last 2 weeks ago. And here's the final, shove it up your ass, throw it to Worthy, prove to you that he's the better receiver. You should have taken him. He has 2 touchdowns and over 100 yards. Screw you.
Keon Coleman did that like one time. He had like good game that one time in like the middle of the year. Like it's the same thing.
God, yeah,
not the same thing.
No,
poor Keon Coleman.
Yeah, I will rag on him far too much, but it's not his fault. It's not. It was just not.
He was always a second or third round talent that got drafted too high.
Yep.
He was never supposed to go that high, ever, and he did. It's not his fault.
By a team that didn't really need that, in my opinion.
Well,
but I think that was all I had.
That's about it for me. Yeah. One last thing was just to mention that Matt Collins is an expiring contract this year, so that's the last you have to see of him.
Oh, I don't know. Like, I would not be shocked if he was back.
He's like 32.
Like the charisma combined with the blocking and even just his impact as a receiver, which was minimal, but it felt like once every 3 games he would catch a big touchdown or have a big grab that actually impacted the outcome of the game. Like, he'll be back. I'm like fairly confident Matt Collins will be back, and that will just be another year of Keon Coleman being buried. And we're like, where's Keon? Oh, he's still playing behind Mac for the second consecutive season.
Yeah, well,
I would hold your horses there. You don't know this front office, this organization the way I do. They love their characters around here.
Well, we will get into that for the next probably few weeks to even a few months. We're going to kind of be getting into team building, team rebuilding, drafting free agents. That's going to be a big one for them. Where is Rasul Douglas going to go? Is Kyer Elam the next starting perimeter corner for the Buffalo Bills? We'll find that out at some point. But that was all I had from today.
All right. Yep, me too. I'm glad we shored this one up pretty nicely. Wrap it up around an hour.
Yeah, look at that. 58 minutes. Good shit.
All right. Well, we will talk to you guys in the next one. If you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, follow, share. You can find all of our socials down in the description. For Against the Blitz, you can find all of our socials for both of us individually down in the description. Let us know what you thought of Super Bowl 59, and we will see you guys in episode 10.
See you then.